Hark and well met, folks, and welcome back to the channel. I know it's been a hot minute. I got some splaining to do. I apologize for the long time away, but the true fact of the matter is I've been gone for about 2 months on field work. It's the summer, it's the archaeological prime, baby, and my laptop went kaput during this trip. It decided that it was no longer going to keep up with technology. The machine is about as old as my archaeological career, and it's starting to show for it. Here. Seriously, it's a problem that needed addressing. Oh God, did I actually break that time? Anyway, point is, I got a new machine coming, so it's going to be all set. But I wanted to get this video out to you guys while I have the chance. I'm home for at least another week or two before I get zapped out to another part of the country. Today's video, very exciting. It's my first time ever interviewing another archaeologist about a subject, and I think it's something that you guys are gonna love, especially if you watched our video about stone tools being utilized in different survival type video games, and you thought, hey, that's a pretty cool thing. That's a neato little process, the old Flintknapping, making tools that look good. Anyway, that's the point of this video. We're talking about stone tool making, Flintknapping, getting together stuff like this. Spoiler alert, I have a thing in here. I'll show you it at the end. It's very nice. It's very fancy. Today's special guest is a man named Daniel DuBoe, a Midwest-based archaeologist and Flintknapper who agreed to be in this video the same day he met me, so man's got the spirit. And as I said, we're going to be talking about the subject of Flintknapping, the process of taking stone, chert, flint, whatever you want to call it, and reducing it down to workable stone tools and objects. It's a very cool process, and it's the bread and butter of archaeological artifacts in the North America, especially when you're dealing with prehistoric sites. This was my first ever time Flintknapping, and I had a whole lot of fun with it, even though I did pay blood to the blood god. Anyway, if you end up liking this and you want to see more content involving other archaeologists and other specialties, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, enjoy the film, and I promise I'm going to do more stuff in quicker time frames soon. Okay, see you later. Subscribe to the channel. Hey everybody, how's it going? We are out here today where we are going to be doing some Flintknapping of taking prehistoric stone tools and figuring out how people would go about making them. You know, pretty basic stuff. I've never done this before in my entire life, so I am putting my fingers in the hands of this gentleman here. So Daniel here is going to be showing us a little bit about Flintknapping and how we are going to be making these objects and how people would have potentially made them in the way olden times, as well as like maybe some typologies. I don't know. We'll go through it. We'll see. So yeah, Daniel, just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you and what you do, and what we've got going on for us today.
Cool. Well, my name's Daniel. I've been Flintknapping for a little over 2 years. I've been doing archaeology for about 3 years now, doing primarily field work and laboratory stuff. And I'd say what got me into this was initially starting off in archaeology, and you know, throughout indigenous cultures, they utilized tools for their daily life. Almost, you know, most functions that we do nowadays, they would have had to do as well. So, you know, how did they get the job done? They used their natural resources that were available to them. So when I started doing archaeology fieldwork, started finding a lot of, you know, these things. These are called flakes. They are probably the most abundant portion of the archaeological record that's left behind from the Native Americans and indigenous populations in North America. So, you know, finding all of this stuff, not really knowing what it is or how it got there, but knowing that it's significant enough that we collected it, and that's what we were looking for in a lot of places, to find evidence of people being there. So not really understanding flakes, I kind of just turned to YouTube, started watching some Flintknapping stuff, and eventually got myself some local varieties of chert to where I'm from. Chert is synonymous with flint. They are essentially the same thing. People argue about that forever. So I found some local materials, started hitting it with hammer stones that are just a smidge harder than the rock that you use to make the tools. You know, made lots of gravel for about 6 months, and then I started making stuff that kind of looks like this. So
It's a very zoomed out view with this camera, so that's
Yeah,
why I'm like
yeah.
holding it
No,
up so
you're
that
good.
people can actually see what we're working with here. Well, Daniel, thank you very much. That's a huge, a very good chunk of information. Yeah, chert flakes are pretty much like the bread and butter of prehistoric artifacts that archaeologists are finding. A lot of times when we're out classifying sites, little flakes are all the things that we really find, which are just indications of habitation or usage in the area, whether or not people were just retouching tools that they were using in different areas, or whether or not they were there actually producing artifacts or projectile points in various types. So we have a couple example ones. Are these all ones that you've made, or?
All this stuff down here, except for this one. That one was made by a friend of mine at a recent knapping festival. Get together happens a couple times a year. You can hold that one up.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to. So this one's obsidian. Oh my gosh, that's gorgeous. You can like see through it basically. But looking at this piece right here and then holding up my finger behind it, I don't even know if the camera can pick it up or not, but you could see right through it there. That's really beautiful.
Also, it's a rainbow obsidian, but you have to catch it in the light just right for it to get that color flash.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I haven't seen anything like that. And then this one here, you were working on this one when I walked out, right?
So you can zoom in on that. That
Yeah.
is what something called a biface looks like.
Oh wait, hold on, talking to that.
That's a biface. Very common preform or blank, they get called very often. That one is in the later stage of lithic reduction. So starting out, that piece looked a lot more like this piece here. It's more raw. It has some larger flakes taken off of it, but it hasn't been refined into a shape or size that would be usable for something like a knife or a projectile point to be either thrown with an atlatl or shot on the tip of an arrow.
Yeah, so when we're taking these big initial pieces, or when folks were taking these big initial pieces, they're looking to get the rough outer cortex layer off to expose like the nice good flint in the middle.
That's often a serious challenge that I encountered with that rock right there. It's a good example, and I put a 6 on it so I could try to sell it to somebody else and let it be their problem.
Well, that's smart. That's very smart. So in terms of the tools that we're using, do you use, it looks like you have a mix of modern and maybe like what prehistoric folks might have used.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so can you tell us a little bit about them and what their purpose is, what they were used for?
Yeah. So these are pressure flakers. Commonly they are literally just, the one on the one without the other piece of antler set into the antler. That one is a 1-year-old buck's antler. It's a deer shed. That's a super common way for modern knappers to get their tools. Is every year when the deer drop their antlers, they go out and they pick them up. Looks like my dog got a hold of this one. So they'll pick them up, and then you can make a variety of tools from the antlers.
So can you explain what the usage difference between a hammerstone versus a pressure flaker is?
Absolutely, I'll show you. So a hammerstone would be for something like knocking off large flakes. You can see these ridges here.
Mm-hmm.
Those are more indicative of hammerstone work. So I'll do a couple flakes here and see if I can't get something to pop off. Typical hammerstone varieties, the lithic varieties of stones that you would use to break the flint into smaller pieces are granite, sandstone, river cobbles. Anything that is harder than the flint can be used as a hammerstone. So this is a granite hammerstone.
Mm-hmm.
This is actually an original that I found in a place that I was quarrying flint with, and instead of putting it on a shelf, I continue to use it. Some people might have issue with that.
Yeah. So what we just took off here is called a primary flake. That means that it's one of the first flakes. It still has cortex on it. It was one of the initial ones that come out as part of the lithic reduction process, meaning the process of getting a large piece of lithic rock, the chert that we'll be using down into its more workable state. We then also have secondary flakes, which are ones more like this, which kind of come off of the reduced version. And then finally there's tertiary flakes, which are usually the very tiniest little guys that come off as the process really hammers home towards the sharpening of the edges. Oh my gosh, they can get so tiny. They can get so tiny. but these tertiary flakes are usually like the last little pieces to come off, and that's what you'll see again on one of these obsidian pieces. You can see like the little edges that are getting flaked off right at the end, just to give it that sharp edge, and that's what those ones are. So, do you have a particular like favorite type of material to work with, like a certain type of chert, or like are you a big fan of obsidian? Or I see you have a couple different ones down there, so I wasn't sure.
Yeah. So I really do like to work obsidian. It is a much more fragile rock than most flints and cherts are. Flint and chert can be really difficult materials to shape and work, whereas obsidian is generally softer. It takes less power to get larger flakes from obsidian because it's, essentially a stacked, millions of layers of stacked glass. They kind of, they just pop off without a lot of effort. And I don't have any large obsidian cobbles, otherwise I'd show you how easy it is. As far as like learning goes, I think obsidian is a great lithic resource to use for learning because it shows you so much more of what you're doing, as where these more opaque flints and things like that, it's harder to read because the colors can kind of confuse things. I think in particular, like personally, gray chert, which is super abundant in North America, like your grays, your beiges, they're plentifully common, but they are less of teachers in my opinion than obsidian is. Obsidian teaches you how to hold, it teaches you how sharp these things can actually get. It's a very dangerous thing if you're not particularly skilled or, familiar with how to hold stuff. One wrong slip, a buddy of mine, I had to super glue his hand up recently.
Oh my gosh.
One slip and you have an open,
Well, I mean, they were used for weapons, so man, it's a weapon. You got to be careful. Just like if you're like whetstone sharpening any kind of modern knife or tool or something. I mean, they were very effective at what they did, So that's super cool. So, do you have a favorite type of projectile point to make? Like, are you a fan of certain types of spearheads, or do you like a specific type of projectile point, like a very like a culture typology or something?
I can't say for certain. I really appreciate most forms, but this right here is pretty similar to a McCorkle. It's an archaic phase technology where the base was bifurcated here, so that helps out with hafting. Kind of funny looking, looks like Mickey Mouse ears. That's, in knappers we talk about, you got a good Mickey Mouse ear base there. Pretty common thrown around, but I'm actually going to work on this and try to thin out this base a little bit to be able to haft it easier and set it into a knife handle easier. The thinner your base is, the easier it hafts and the more secure your haft is going to be. If you have a uniform area, you can see it's not super uniform. It's kind of bulging here and gets thinner towards the midsection. So I'm going to thin that out here and use what's called an ishi stick. And then I'm going to switch over to an antler tine and do some more traditional pressure flaking.
Very cool. And when we're talking about hafting, that's the process where we take the projectile point and actually attach it onto whatever like rod or a like the haft of a arrow or the handle of a spear or something like that. That's the process where you tie it off is what hafting is.
So this is just a stack of leather that I glued together. It's for support to the tool. It supports your efforts to drive force through them. Doing it barehanded would be a horrible, horrible time. So this leather protects you and it supports the rock as well.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So Flintknapping obviously was a very important element of prehistoric life, and it seems like you and a number of other people are ongoing the Flintknapping process in today's world. Can you tell us a little bit about what Flintknapping culture is like today for folks, for both archaeologists or just lay people who have an enthusiasm for this type of cool bit of history?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I mean, I can't say for certain, like, there is a type of person that likes to flint knap.
Yeah, I mean, I've met multiple flint knappers in the archaeological community, like people who do it as a form of like either experimental archaeology, which is like taking historic practices or prehistoric practices and trying it out in the modern age to see if you can learn how they did it by doing it yourself. But then others who just do it just for the sake of learning more about how flaking happens and to keep an eye out for stuff in the field. But I know that there are like flint knapping conventions and stuff like that, or like events that people go to try and learn more about it.
Yeah, so generally, I'll say knappers don't like technology, and they're not the best at it. A lot of dudes I know are still struggling to figure out how to work their phones. The crowd is generally, older, but there are a lot of people my age, late 20s, early 30s, that are either just knappers who are into it because they found an arrowhead when they were a kid, or people that are in archaeology that are looking to steep themselves in a little bit of the process of how people lived. It's a very informative hobby. It teaches you a lot about patience and your own limits, as far as like it's kind of like chess. It's definitely a thinky. You can hit on rocks all day and try to make a point, but if you don't really plan out your series of attacks on this rock, it goes sideways so quick.
So what do you recommend for like a very first time person who's getting into this? Because like I said, I've never done any flint knapping before in my life, so I'm about to try and like dive headfirst into this and see how bad it goes. But if somebody like sees this and wants to get into flint knapping, do you have any good recommendations? I know right now we picked a location in the hotel parking lot because you don't want to do it inside.
Yeah, definitely don't be like another coworker of mine and flint knap in your living room. That's a no-go. You're going to be vacuuming pressure flakes for weeks to come.
Well, I heard about people who the dust would kick up and they were like coughing and hacking because like the micro flakes in the air were like cutting up their throats.
So that is definitely another factor. You typically want to be outdoors, or if you got money to spare, get a really good HEPA filter. Mm-hmm. Something if you are going to nap indoors, which I do when the weather's bad or it's too cold for me to be outside and make flakes, I'll go in the basement, but I do usually wear a respirator. It's really important. You do not want to be like the kids and teenagers of the English gunflint production era and die of silicosis at 30 years old. That's a really gnarly way to go out.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a good time.
Maybe compare it to like emphysema. It basically, all of these tiny, all of this dust.
Yeesh. Yeah, that definitely does not look fun to breathe in.
Particularly obsidian, when you strike it, it releases a little plume of silica, right? So this is microscopic flakes, essentially, and they go into your lungs. They find little pockets, they hang out. Your lung builds tissue over top of them. You now always have silica in your lungs.
Oh, gosh,
so every napper ever, we got a little
do it
cough.
outside, do it outside.
But also, do it outside. You sit in a circle with 8-10 people and everybody's breaking rocks like crazy. Step away for a minute.
Yeah.
Take a good breath of fresh air.
Yeah, that sounds really cool.
Come back to it.
Okay, so why don't you show us like a little bit of the step by step? I know that you had some that you were working on. This one I see that you've been like reducing down some of the flakes some more and trying to get that point really lined up. How do you approach this? Like, what do you do when you see like a raw piece of rock? And do you see the end goal, like the point that you want to have when you're doing it, or do you let the process guide you?
Unless I'm really determined, I usually just try to do my best to make these bifaces. If you have bifaces, you have blanks. You can make a lot of different types of tools from those. So, my first primary goal is to get a good uniform biface. Second primary goal is to manage that biface in a way that allows me to work it further efficiently. So that basically means just setting up what are called platforms. And this is a really good example of a platform right here. So I would, take an antler bopper or something, and I would hit that little protrusion right there. So you have to build those into your rock as you work it down to continue to further work that rock and thin it out.
And that's so hard to tell from the rest of the edge. Like trying to identify that platform there is just like it's like the minuscule little flattened part out that gives you the opportunity to really anchor that in and get that flake popped off.
Yeah, absolutely. So the nature of how flint and chert breaks, it's called conchoidal fracturing. Basically what that means is if you've ever seen a window with like somebody shot a BB or a pellet gun into it and it has that perfect little circle in the window, that's the tried and true example of a conchoidal fracture. So it breaks in a circular fashion. So every time you're taking your hammerstone or your boppers and you're striking, you have to angle your rock and your strike in a way that that circle that wants to expand off of your point of contact travels along a ridge. Mm-hmm. And that's the only way to thin rocks down, is to get your flakes to travel in a direction that you want them to. And that can be a really difficult path for sure. So you have to build these platforms around or centered to or oblique to, depending on how you're working, these ridges that occur from removing other flakes. So if you can space your flakes out in an efficient manner, you can keep your platforms in an efficient manner and continue to work the rock in a way that continues to make it thinner as you go down throughout, your hits, as opposed to hitting it 8 times on one side and you only thin out one little area and then you flip it and you try to match it, and it can be a losing battle sometimes.
Yeah, it definitely seems that way. It's a very complicated process.
So antlers are a really valuable natural resource for prehistoric people for a number of reasons. So this is an elk beam. This is the point of contact that it would have come off the elk's head. There was one tine coming from right up here. I actually took that off and made a knife handle out of it a few days ago. So this is an elk. This is not native to my region. These are all whitetail billets. So, you have your larger billet, larger flake. Second largest billet, good flakes. Third largest billet, kind of softer. This came from an old shed, so it was pretty weathered. And then, small billet, small flakes. This is an antler tine that I have sharpened down to a very narrow passage, and you could cut with that too if you really needed to. That's a good pressure flaker and a notcher. That might even be a little too sharp for notching. It's going to wear away very quickly. But I just put that down on a grinding wheel, angled it real heavy. I did a lot of this work with, a hacksaw and a file. So if you have, a deer antler up on a mantle or whatever, you have knapping tools. If you have sandstone or quartzite or granite, you have knapping tools. Those are both heavily used hammerstones.
I can see the pock marks in there. Is that stuff that was like naturally in there, or some of those popping off from this flake working? So
the differential wear on this, the larger like macro wear, the larger pitting, that's just from the natural rock. This was a very weird shape when I started using it, and you see all of the areas that are lighter, they're a little bit more smoother. Those are my main points of contact for creating flakes. And then this is, what we would call an abrader. This type of stone, that's a variety of sandstone from
I could feel how rough it is.
That's from where I am from, actually. It's a really good quality sandstone. And then this is a piece of a grinding wheel. So modern knappers, in a lot of cases, will use these grinding wheels or break them up into smaller pieces so that it's easier to manage in their hands. But
like
literally, a grinding wheel, you can get different grits that work better with different stones. Like this one is a very fine grit, so I like to use this one when I'm doing obsidian work. This one is
it's very porous.
Super coarse grit. It's almost gone. But this is just a good, beefy, multi-use abrader. There are different types of abrading. That just comes with time. So all of these antler billets can be compared to copper billets.
I see. Oh, is this where you're going next? Did I jump the gun on you there?
So a lot of modern knappers will use modern tools. They'll use copper nails and they will set them into, this is called a Durlin or a Delrin, say Durlin? Delrin rod. It's a high density plastic. For whatever reason, somebody used it to make a pressure flaker, and it's kind of just kicked off in the community as, you know, kind of a staple in flint knapping is these, they're called Ishi sticks. Ishi is the name of a Native American from California area. He was of the Yahi tribe. It's a really good book I recommend about him. But he would use steel nails in his flint knapping. In the early 1900s, late 1800s, he would use just steel nails. And he would work glass, and a lot of knappers like to replicate his styles. He made some pretty fancy notching.
Yeah, this just feels like twine, like or you know, like whatever it's called, like twine wrapped around this steel nail repeatedly until you had like a decent handle.
Yeah. And so this hand pad is also kind of a shout out Ishi for being a great guy. So he would cut out just a little hole in his hand pads, and then you can slip your hand right in there, right? So
like
your thumb is protected.
Yeah.
You can open it up as large as you want. You can fold it down. This is the size I've been working at recently. It's just very comfy. There's a lot of support here. It's very stable. Good thick leather. So this is also kind of, I don't see this a lot, but this is definitely something that Ishi had in his toolkit when he was living at the museum.
I love how like the Flint Knapper's kit, apart from like these more modern Ishi sticks, is very much like an all natural type thing. It's like it's just rough pieces of leather, antler, various types of rock that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
It's very
my blood. All
yeah,
over it.
your blood everywhere. Well, I mean, yeah, you gotta give them what they're due. Blood for the blood gods. So. Let's talk a little bit about what these types of, what these projectile points and everything are being used for. There's the very obvious examples of arrowheads and spearheads, but what are some other things that you can make through flint knapping that aren't necessarily in those main categories of what people are out there hunting for? They're looking for arrowheads.
I think celts and adzes or adzes are good examples of that. So they would have been workhorse woodworking tools. A lot of the woods called iron woods in the high density family of variety of wood that could be sourced were highly sought out by Native Americans. Osage is a good example of that. If you've never tried to work a piece of Osage, it is one of the hardest woods that you can source in North America. And to do any kind of work on that wood, you need to have good hardworking tools. So if you took, I don't know if I have one, maybe I definitely have something in here, a large biface, right?
Ooh, yeah, that one.
So if you took a good large biface and you grind it, and you can make a chisel out of it, essentially, you can haft that onto an element like this. And this is a poor example, but you could haft it to something like that, right? And that is a workhorse
just
tool.
like a little simple, like a mini hoe or something.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
like a hatchet.
Exactly. So chert or celts and adzes are, a part of the record for sure. You could sharpen, grind down your faces to a nice 45-degree angle, and you have something that you can chip wood with all day long. If your haft is strong, that tool keeps going until your haft breaks, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of adzes were socketed into woods, heavily reinforced with leather, and it's a nice rock here. I don't know what that is. Maybe Burlington.
It's really pretty. Burlington, yeah, a very white shirt, but this one's got this really pretty kind of like purple lines that are running through it almost. That is a really pretty piece.
Yeah, so something like this, this is, a lot of people would call that like a spear point, right? That's just a biface that I've sharpened down to get kind of that general triangular shape to it.
And I could even see like fastening it to a piece of wood like right where my finger is to make like a little axe head out of like a mini axe head or something like that.
That's a tool right there, the way it is.
Yeah.
This piece is actually not a bad, I think I was planning to make like a small handheld celt out of this.
Yeah.
But if you straighten this edge here and you sharpen it to a point right there,
Yeah, I could totally see that.
that's a good hand tool. That's a good woodworking tool. You can work on bones with it. You can work on antlers with it. It's harder than those, so you can remove mass from those objects with this little piece of flint.
So flintknapping seems like it's a very multi-purpose skill that people would have needed to know in prehistoric times, whether here in North America or, you know, in other places where, because, you know, stone tools like this are a global, it's a global thing, global prehistory. So it seems like people from whatever role and tasks they had within like the village life would have needed to use flintknapping to accomplish the various things that they had to do, right?
Or at least be really good friends with one. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Or at least know a guy.
Yeah. I mean, think about it like a mechanic. Like, not everybody needs to be a really great mechanic, but if everybody generally knows how to fix 10 or 15 things on their car, it's pretty useful.
Yeah, that's a really good analogy. Like, yeah, you gotta know how to pump your own gas or how to change a tire or something.
Right. You should be able to, you know, I'm not, you know, gonna get sued for this, but if you were an indigenous person in, you know, what we refer to as prehistory, and you did not know how to take a large piece of flint and break a flake off of it and use that flake as a tool, I imagine you were ostracized to some degree, you know.
And that actually brings up a really good point about sporadic, on-the-move kinds of tools. A lot of times, people wouldn't need to chip everything down into these forms. They could just use one really good, solid, big flake to accomplish a lot of the basic tasks of cutting and working, right?
Absolutely. So large flakes, you know, even small flakes like this one right here, that's a cutting tool. It's razor thin.
It's a sharp edge. I've cut myself on flakes before in the field, like not having gloves on when I'm screening.
Trying to bag them, or you catch one under your fingernail.
Yeah, absolutely.
They will hurt you, you know, 10,000 years later. So let's see if I can't get like a good flake, and I'll show you an example of what a good...
That's a beautiful piece of obsidian. That's huge.
This was a biface that was much larger yesterday that sadly I exploded in half.
Well, that's okay. Now you have two bifaces.
Right, yeah.
Gosh, that's huge, though.
So I'm going to try to set myself up a platform here and get a good flake to run off this so I can show you just how you can kind of hear the...
Oh.
Of course I do that. And then
No, it's okay. It's okay.
So this
Yeah.
went to a few pieces, but that is a primary thinning flake. So those flakes alone, that could be your toolkit if you really needed it to be. If you have a large piece of flint, what we consider a core, gets thrown around a lot, has a lot of different things that it could mean, but really what it does mean is that it has had flakes driven off of it. You can carry this around and you knock a flake off like that, you have a cutting tool anywhere, anytime you need it.
Yeah, so you'd have a core piece of this flint that would be like an on-the-go type whenever you need it. Sort of like, let me just knock a flake or two off of here and then do what I got to do, and then pocket the core for later use, like a portable tool-making kit.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because you could use a hammerstone anywhere that you find off the ground.
This is 150 razor blades packed into one rock if you really need it. Probably more.
I don't know. That's a way better deal than I get at like CVS.
Absolutely. I wouldn't shave.
Oh, I just did it. I just did the thing. I was just picking it up. Okay. No, we're good. We're good. Yeah.
Bleed on it, you buy it.
Bleed on it, you buy it. Okay. Well, then I guess this one's mine then. That's it. Guys, I haven't even started the process yet, and I'm already bleeding. Okay, so I'm all bandaged up, and we're all good now. I've paid the price.
Now you're ready to nap. So the cool thing about obsidian is that it is literally so sharp that you will heal faster than any other cut that you've had.
Really?
I've opened my finger up before, and literally the next day it's sealed shut. It's so thin and it is so sharp that you just heal fast.
Yeah, I mean, I know obsidian has a reputation as like one of the sharpest types of tools that were being used and made, and you know the weapons made with obsidian, are just as dangerous as like a lot of steel and things. But it's crazy to see. That's the first time I've dealt with obsidian, and the first time that I've paid the price, so to speak.
So if you are, starting out and you're learning, please wear gloves. I did. I'm not now. I've been doing this for a couple years. you know, and I just kind of take it into my own hands, I guess. There are certain things that I do in the knapping process. If I have a large rock, you know, larger than I can manage with one hand, I will put a glove on my left hand and use that to support, because there's a lot of flakes that just fly off. They'll stick you. Barefoot, I knap barefoot sometimes. I will have flakes sticking out of the tops of my feet.
Oh my God.
Or into the bottoms of my feet from just like readjusting.
I guess I just made all the wrong choices today, I guess.
It's all good. I mean, you can see all of these down here are little knives that will and can slice you open. So let's see if I can't get another good flake example to drive off of this obsidian core. So this is a pretty good example of a primary flake.
Ooh, great.
Check out that bulb of percussion on the back side there.
Yeah, so the bulb of percussion is something that we look for when we're identifying. It's going to be hard to think, I think, to tell on camera, but the angle and the way that it breaks off, it has like almost like a rounded element to it, which makes it easier to identify from the standpoint of like seeing the shape of the flake as it pops off.
Yeah, generally, you know, on larger flakes and on a lot of smaller flakes too, but they can be damaged, you will have this curvature to them. They kind of have a potato chip look to them, yeah. I like to think. They will have a platform. That is where it was struck. They will have a bulb of percussion. That is the force of the bopper. How did I hit this?
Bopper, is that the official term?
Yeah, the official term of the antler.
Okay, so we're gonna try and get me set up doing something. Is that what we want to do? Should we try it out ourselves?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. So what do you have in mind? Do you have a piece picked out?
Yeah. So this piece right here, that's a piece of Burlington. It's
okay.
A chert from Missouri, Oklahoma area, I believe. Is
very
where
nice.
it's sourced from.
Very nice.
And this is a style of point from that area called a hell gap.
Hell gap?
Yes. It's a plain style, could have been used as a projectile, functions as a knife. It's a multi-purpose shape. You could throw that, you could put it in a handle. You can do a lot of things with that shape of stone tool there.
So we're gonna be taking this Burlington piece and we are going to be shaping it into that piece.
That's the goal.
That's the goal? Okay. Let's see what we can do here. Put that there and hopefully it works. Okay, so again, how do I do? So we start with you're getting the edge dulled so I don't have a repeat incident.
Yes,
that's probably for the best. Probably for the best. Yeah.
Safety and for flakes to travel better, we're gonna abrade the edges.
Okay.
So that when you put the pressure flaker on there. The pressure will be applied to a portion of the rock that has the ability to drive the flake versus a portion of the rock that is fragile and does not drive a flake.
Okay, cool.
So you want to abrade most of your fragile areas, especially if you're starting serious work on something. You don't want a lot of sharp edges to A, cut you and stop your work, or B, stall your flakes.
Right. So you said that it's a good idea for beginners to wear gloves, and I think we've seen from experience. So I think for the sake of safety, it's probably a good idea if we get these lined up. You only need one glove.
You're right-handed?
Cool. I am right-handed.
Okay, perfect.
I am right-handed, yeah. Okay, so we put the glove on so we don't do it again.
This is a pressure flaker.
Yeah.
This is a grooved hand pad.
Okay, possible try.
So all of these, one way that I heard a gentleman explain it to his son is that you see all the smiley faces?
I can kind
smiley,
of see it. Yeah.
Frowny, smiley, frowny.
Okay,
smiley,
okay. So the
kind
angle
of
of
jagged edge.
Yeah.
Put your flaker on all of the smiley faces.
And I'm popping it towards me.
Pop it towards this part of the hand.
Oh, I see it. I see it. Yeah.
So your action is in and down, and it's good to kind of get your elbows and your shoulders. Put your flaker directly on that platform.
Okay, I see the process. Okay, so I'll set this thing up and then come at it on that angle. And so I see a smiley right there.
I'm gonna flip this for you.
Oh yeah, do it. Whatever you
start here and work towards the base.
Okay. So I've got that smiley right there. And I'll...
Pop.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
That's
okay.
a flake.
And that's it. I did it. That's the.
That's Flintknapping.
This is it. I did it. That's my very first flake. It's like the same color. It's the same color as my skin. It's like hard to tell.
And then work
Okay.
laterally towards your base.
Work laterally towards the base. Okay. I should probably move my thumb out of the danger zone there.
Pop.
Ooh.
Yep, hit that one.
Oh, okay, that was good. I felt that one.
Yep. And while you're doing that, I'll finish this.
I feel it in the wrists already.
My wrists
Ooh.
are blown out from
That was a little big.
troweling.
That's like
and
almost a
from
notch there.
Flintknapping. Yeah, troweling and Flintknapping is a great way to destroy your wrists.
Yeah.
Do it every day.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know
for
some of
2
that.
years.
Ooh, okay, that part like crumbles off there.
Mm-hmm.
That edge. So is this one back here like a good striking platform because it's so big and wide, or
Yes. So that would be good for a strike.
no?
So
Okay, I'll
skip
hold that
it,
off. I'll hold.
move down here, and continue working around the base.
Ah, okay, okay.
Towards
I
the
see,
tip
I see, I
on
see.
the other side. Because I started at the tip. I started at the tip up here,
Yeah.
and tick, 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 and then now you're down there. So skip that. I'll hit that,
Okay.
and move your way around.
Okay. Well, I'm definitely catching the leather gloves, so I'm glad that I wore that.
Yep. You'll hit it with the
Oh,
flaker
that huge
and
thing
with
is
the
definitely-
pad and the tool.
And so now I work up this side. Right? Now, because I've turned it,
Yep.
so I now come around and I'm working
So
up this
I'd
side.
start about here.
Okay. Do we want to get a couple, like, do you think it's a good idea for me to try and hammer it?
I'll pop a couple flakes off there, see what I can't do.
Okay. That's what I'm saying. Do you think it's a good idea for me to try it, or should I just not even try to do that today?
I wouldn't try to do that
Okay,
yet. I'll give
so-
you another rock if
alright.
you want to strike on it.
Okay, yeah, I would love to try striking a couple, and then what we'll do is we'll cut the feed and then come back together.
Back to your obsidian.
So you think I'm ready to take on the beast that cut
the one
me?
that hurt you.
Oh my God!
So,
Vengeance!
I was
Vengeance!
working, this was actually a piece that was in frame earlier. I was working on it. It was kind of shaped like a calzone or something.
Oh yeah, it was one of the bigger ones. You've whittled it down during the process. Okay, cool.
So I've napped that into kind of a more oval shape that is good for taking that shape, turning it into an arrowhead.
Okay.
So let me abrade this for you,
Okay, cool.
and then I'll point out a couple areas where you should strike.
Okay.
And I'm going to give you antler, and then I'm going to give you copper. And you're going to see the difference in why modern nappers love copper so much.
Okay. Yeah.
to
Yeah.
work Flint with.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Some other TikTok napper is going to get on there and rip my form apart and say, "Why do you abrade so much?"
Oh well, you do what you do. Whatever works for you, right? The end result is still a point.
One weird thing about this is it's hard for people to get the hold right because it's not really counterintuitive. So when you're holding this, let's say you want to strike right here where that white pock marks are, right?
Okay. Yeah. I see it.
So you want to hold it in your hand with good support on the opposite side of it,
Okay.
and you want to support the flake you're going to move as well. So
Okay.
use your middle finger,
Yeah.
hold it right here,
Okay.
kind of where you think that flake you want it to terminate, right?
Right.
So you want it to terminate
Like
here.
right at the end
So
there.
you're going to pinch it there,
So that it holds it in place. Ah, I see.
good
So
back
that-
pressure,
and then just knock that part off.
and it did drive in that direction.
It did. Yeah,
it's
it
not
did.
as big as I wanted, but it drove in that
Yeah,
direction.
so it was this little line right there that came out as a result. Okay, so that's where you want me to strike too. So like put my
Yeah.
pressure finger like right there,
Yep.
hold
Right
it like
next to
that,
it,
and then
strike it
like right
there.
there-ish. Okay,
Yep.
let's see if I do it. Let's see how this goes.
Just catch the very edge of it.
Oh no! Well, now we have. Can you do the one of those like one of those points that comes in like that. I'll pay for the piece. Don't worry,
Dude, don't worry about it.
So I got a little overzealous. The need for vengeance overcame my soul.
Also, there's a volcanic ash inclusion in there, so you can blame the inclusion.
Oh, I'm totally going to do that. You could actually see that little gray spot right there. Is that what you're talking about?
That's an ash pocket
Okay,
that
so
has solidified inside of the obsidian in the process of it cooling.
Dad Ash. Okay, so
Big
so I got a little
memes.
overzealous. I swear I thought it was just the edge. So now is this salvageable or have I completely ruined it?
Let me
It is.
fix it in 25 seconds.
Yeah, I think maybe I'm gonna stick to the pressure flaking. I think that was going a little better for me.
Generally a really good area for people to learn on because
Pressure flaking?
it's a little less dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And you can get...
Yeah, because I could totally catch a knuckle doing that if I had it wrong.
Oh yeah, I mean I've hit my leg with,
With flakes.
brass mallets and flakes before. And
Yeesh. Okay.
neither one of them feel good.
Well, we were talking before about how like through the process of napping something down, you learn like what shape it's going to take on. So I hope that I made an okay contribution towards the eventual shape of this thing.
So you just remove all the area around where your break was, right?
Yeah.
On both sides. Over here's okay. Let's try to get this one.
Okay. Okay.
Nice.
That went that went better.
One over here. Decent. Drove at least halfway, maybe just a smidgen beyond halfway right
Okay.
there.
Yeah,
That's
I see it.
the key to thinning is you want your flakes to travel halfway or more across the face of your rock.
Okay, cool. Yeah, mine. Fortunately, mine didn't go halfway because then you wouldn't have much rock to deal with after that. But I think this is probably that piece.
Yeah, it's like
That
shaped,
looks like
it's
it.
like shaped like a moon kind of.
Yeah.
Oh, here's one.
Oh, that was likely. Yeah, that's
So that's what we call in the field shatter.
shatter. Right. Okay. Well, see, it was all in the pursuit of education now because we've learned a new term. So, lithic shatter.
So that's a really good
skewered.
flake.
Oh yeah.
Careful.
Yeah. Don't do it again. Don't do it again. I love the striations that we're seeing in this obsidian. How it's like we're getting that real black with the lighter gray coming through on the other side. It's really beautiful material.
This stuff is from a particular canyon in Utah.
Mhm.
I want to say it's called Dead Horse or Wild Horse.
Dead or wild horse?
Either one.
Yeah.
Cool horses, cool obsidian. I bought a lot of this stuff off of a Flintknapper from Utah who has access to hundreds of pounds of it. And he sent me-
So there is like a whole like Flint network for where to like ethically source your flint and all
Absolutely. There are, what is it called? The sphere of interaction. There's a sphere of interaction
The
among
circle of flint nappers.
modern flint nappers who keep the best stuff for themselves and their buddies and
Oh, well,
send
that
the
makes
rest
sense,
to
yeah.
people in the mail. So we're about back to where we were. That pocket right there.
Yeah,
I'm worried.
I'm seeing it develop. You're
Just
worried
kind
about
of-
that
I'm
ash.
worried
that's
about that ash and then this crack that kind of seems to come off of it right there.
Yeah, so we've got the little ash piece that we picked up before, and then the crack that's running along it. You're worried that's going to be like a destabilization of the material.
Yes. So oftentimes if you don't do that to the rock will do it to itself because they are full of flaws. I mean, this stuff is the way it's formed is chaotic and haphazard, and the way that it cools also is.
So what we are saying is that beyond just like huffing copium, it was actually maybe a flaw in the rock that created that issue,
Absolutely.
and not just my complete incompetence at a first
Absolutely.
time.
There are so many problems in every kind of rock I've worked, even the higher quality, hornstones and Wyandotte cherts and things like that. They can be really, really high quality, but
Yeah.
there's one in a dozen that just are gravel, and they
Yeah.
want to be gravel.
Yeah.
They don't have a high, ratio of silica in certain spots, and then it turns into gravel.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It'll crush. It'll fracture in ways that are not very predictable.
Yeah.
It's a very unpredictable.
So why don't I go back to the easier stuff then, and I'll start pressure flaking something, and we can try and get some angles of what we're dealing with here, and see if we can make it into something a little more functional. Sound good?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so now we're using just this regular antler piece here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then look for the, you said to look for the smile.
Yep.
I see it right there. Oh, it's slipping.
So if it's
Maybe that one
slipping,
right there.
try to move to another area.
We're good.
It's way harder, man. Like, try to hit
Yeah.
like that one right at the edge of my finger. If you take your pressure flaker,
Yeah.
you just put it just on the edge,
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh. Ooh. Okay.
Right on the edge. And you see this one, it's hard to see on this chert, but that flake actually traveled from here to there.
Oh, cool, cool, cool. All right, can I try? Let me try with the copper one again. I've got the big guy.
Try this one.
Okay. Yeah, let's try the big guy.
Put it up under your armpit.
And then just kind of go back.
Try to angle this towards you a little bit.
Okay. So like
Mhm.
that.
Yep.
And then just put it like that. And oh, good. Yeah, I see that.
Way different amount of force to be
Yeah, it
applied
really
antler
is.
versus copper.
It's a lot easier. And then just kind of working our way around it, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
It's funny, it's almost taking on like serrations here.
Mm-hmm.
So if I need to, can I like flip it over to start working at the other direction? Okay. How's yours coming along?
Not too bad. So I'm
Ooh.
just trying to make it more uniform, and to use a term that another YouTube napper uses a lot, regularize. So to get, you see how all these, there's a lot of movement in the piece.
Yeah.
So to flatten one side out completely, flip it, and then work this other side here and
very
kind
cool,
of get
very
these
cool.
raised areas. But just cleaning up the high spots where I can and still have access to at this stage.
Very fun. I feel like I've started getting these serrations in, so I might as well just keep trying for it.
Yeah, serrate it.
Well, guys, yeah, that's pretty much everything you would need to know about flint knapping, at least in terms of its modern usage, and a little bit about how prehistoric folks were doing flint knapping and everything like that. So I could see the piece. It was not just me. The ash portion did eventually take the obsidian, but I'm sure you'll be able to craft something out of that at some point. But Daniel, thank you again so much for agreeing to do all this, even though we literally just met on this project.
Yeah. No problem.
So you mentioned earlier that you sometimes you have like a shop, you sometimes deal with some of this material, and like people are trading back and forth. Do you have anything that you want to say like about the stuff that you do?
Yeah. So I do have like a very small Etsy store. I can give you a link for that and plug it down in the
right here.
cache below. It's called Lithic Cache, Lithic Cache, Lithic Cache.
Okay.
So that's like my little pop-up shop.
Well, again, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you for showing me the ropes and helping me, cut ground and flesh on learning about what flintknapping is. Appreciate it.